Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our third session for the Small Steps to Healthy 2021. Today, we're talking about the secrets to longevity with our Health and Human Sciences educator, Molly Hogue from Wells County. And I'll turn it over to you, Molly.
All right, good morning. So today's session is specifically about living a longer life than, or as long as life is possible, and a good life in those long years. This program came from a trip that I took back in 2017 through my position here at Purdue Extension. We actually went to Ikaria, Greece, and studied the people there and the way that they live, because they have a higher life expectancy in Ikaria to a lot of people living over the years of 100 or living over 100 years of age. And so we learned some secrets, so to speak, that they shared with us and that people have studied their way of life over time. And so I'm going to share those things with you today. And hopefully, we've been living in a pandemic for the past year, and it's kind of given us maybe a lack of hope in that better things are yet to come. And so I hope that this lesson today will give you some hope and give you a positive outlook on where we're going, because I do have hope in that the vaccine for COVID-19 will help us get back to some sense of living as a community and getting back where we can be around people and just live healthy but yet together. And these are some things that we learned in Ikaria that hopefully we can apply, even though we are living amongst a pandemic right now. Because the residents of Ikaria really did have a big sense of community, and we're gonna take a look at that today. So some of the things that we're gonna learn about is the lifestyle of people in Ikaria, and learn how the importance of self-care and connections to health. They really put a lot of emphasis on taking care of themselves and each other. And hopefully at the end of this presentation, you will see how that came together in giving them longer life. And then look at just some healthy lifestyle habits that you can do to add years to your life. And all the pictures that are in this presentation are actually from the trip that I took in Ikaria. So these are real people that I met and we got to interact with. It was just a really great experience. And so hopefully you can relate to these pictures and kind of put yourself in my shoes as you look at the scenery of Ikaria. You can see that in this picture on the slide right now is a beautiful blue sea. That is the Aegean Sea. And if you look here at this slide, it shows you where Ikaria, the island, is. It's a Greek island. It's very close to Turkey. But their mainland is Athens, even though they are closer to Turkey than they are to Athens, Greece. But it's one of the many Greek islands. So there was a person that actually researched people that lived to be 100 years and older, and his name is Dan Buettner, and he actually wrote a book called The Blue Zones. And maybe you've read one of these books, but he's wrote several now around the blue zone concept. And the blue zone concept is that people live in areas where they live to be 100+ years of age and higher amounts than other places. And he determined when he first started doing this research that there were 5 areas in the world that live to be 100+ and higher rates than the rest of us. And Ikaria, Greece is one of those. And so this was a cultural immersion trip that we were there to talk to the individuals and look at the way that they live. And just try to identify why their chronic rates of disease are lower in Ikaria. They have been known to have 20% less cancer there, 50% less heart disease, and there's hardly any signs of dementia in their on their island. Ikaria, Greece is a very mountainous terrain. And so in the pictures, you'll notice how you can see the hills, and they are walking these hills daily. And so they're tending to their gardens, their animals, their friends, their family, all on this mountainous terrain. They basically get to get around on foot. They do drive some, but they mostly work within their communities on foot. And so we'll be looking at these pictures of the area that you can see that just by looking at the backgrounds. So what are these secrets of the Icarians? So in a summary, they live with nature, they eat a healthy diet, they have a great sense of community, they live in the moment, they have a great purpose in life. This is key. And then they also just keep active through movement and daily activities. You can see these pictures right here, how mountainous and how beautiful the area is. And if you were walking those hills and tending to the land, you would probably live a long time too, because of the physical requirements to move about on the terrain. So let's look at the first one, living with nature. This is so key. They eat what they grow and they collect it daily. So in this picture, you can see a lot of greens sitting on this stone bench on the side of their house. And there's fruit in the window. There's some lemons and some, I think it's tangerines or some oranges. And all of the greens and herbs they use daily in their food. So instead of using salt and seasoning, they use herbs to flavor their food, and also the citrus fruits. They use the juice to flavor the foods as well. Olive oil is native there, so they use their own olive oil. And so they collect and grow what they eat. And they live in that nature. They are processing their food. They gather it each day. They eat what's in season. They do some food preservation, but it's pretty nice most of the year round. So they're able to collect fresh foods at some point, or all year round, it's, depending on what it is that's in season. This next point is eat to live versus live to eat. As Americans, we often live to eat. You know, we're thinking about our next meal or how we're going to celebrate and how we're going to eat versus for that celebration. You know, they're just eating to live. They do center their life around the table. They do eat meals together as families and friends. And that relationship is more important than what they're eating at the table. So, you know, they're eating to survive, but they're not living just to eat, you know, as a celebration or whatever it is that their next meal is. Also in the picture, there's some nuts and legumes on the in front of the greens. If you can see those, there's some fresh almonds there. So they process so many fresh foods that are so good for them. And also they do not use pesticides. And so their foods are very, very fresh and not filled with a lot of pesticides or any type of fertilizer. They use natural, organic to the full sense, because they don't utilize that on their foods and as they grow them. And then the last thing is they exercise naturally by walking and gardening. You know, we're told, you know, get physical activity every day, walk, run, ride your bike. they do this just out of living. It's not, oh, I'm going to go get my exercise for the day. They're just walking all the time. If you look at the picture on the bottom right corner where the people are, this was part of our group. The man in the red jacket was one of the Icarians, and we were foraging this day for our food. And so he was taking us up the mountainside to help us collect our goods for the day, which are in the picture on the top. And you can see the black lines on the ground. Those are actually water lines that they naturally bring the water down through. So plants are able to grow on this mountain. Their gardens are kind of stair-stepped. They cut them out so that they can tend to them on different levels and still grow foods in the mountains. So I kind of talked about this a little bit, but eating a healthy diet. They eat what they grow, and they focus on a lot of specifics in terms of what they have available to them. They don't eat a lot of meat. They do raise animals, and typically they raise goats and sheep and pigs, and those are the items that they may eat for meat. They also eat a lot of fish and seafood from the sea. They all make their own wine from the produce that they grow. And so their wine is known to be very high in antioxidants, and they drink wine with each meal. They do not drink wine to get drunk. It's that's part of their meal. Except for breakfast, they usually drink an herbal tea, which is from the herbs that they grow. And fruits and vegetables, obviously lots of greens and lots of fruits and vegetables that they grow on their property. Beans and legumes are very, very plentiful there. They eat a lot of chickpeas. I said before, olive oil. Their honey is amazing. I love their honey. They don't really use sugar. They have to import sugar in. And so for the most part, they use honey as their sugar and ways to sweeten their foods. They aren't big on desserts. And so the honey is actually for like their tea. They put it on top of yogurt, or they put it on top of bread. They usually have bread with each meal. Lots of fresh herbs and spices to flavor their foods. And then, as I mentioned, the herbal tea and Greek yogurt are often consumed on a regular basis. These are some pictures of the foods that we had while we were there. You can see there's some meat in the one picture, and then a green salad, which was a whole variety of greens that we collected. And then the yellow kind of pate thing that you can see on the plate is actually made with chickpeas. It's like it was hot. It was like a side dish for our meal. And then in the bottom right corner are two types of fish that we had. And the one on the left side is actually the full fish. You ate the entire fish, and they were just sauteed in olive oil.
I guess I didn't answer the question. No, I'm just listening to a podcast.
Okay, for those of you that don't have your mic muted, please do so. Thank you. So you can see different fish that we were consuming. Like I said before, there's very little use of any kind of pesticide or fertilizer. And so these foods are fresh, they're healthy. It's basically the Mediterranean diet. So these are things that we can do here. Just because we don't have the mountainous side, we can still grow a wonderful garden, and we can also still purchase these items at our local grocery store, even at a farmer's market in the summer. There are different ways to consume these types of foods in which they have lived their life eating. The next point I'm going to talk about is their strong connection to community. Socialization is very important there. Icarians spend a lot of time with their family and friends and their neighbors, and they know the importance of being having a good friend, being a good friend to somebody else, taking care of each other, making sure that everybody is okay. While we were there, we found out that a man was in his late 80s and he had fallen while he was tending to his garden. It was actually, he was in a tree, like a fruit tree, and he had fallen and broken part of his hip or leg or something. And during that time, he was laid up. It was very hard for him to get out and do anything that he would normally do on a daily basis. And they were seeing his mental health being severely affected from this because he didn't have the connection to his garden and to his friends getting out and about each day. And they were like, we have to do something. His mental health is so important. And yes, his physical health is important because he needed to heal and he couldn't be out and about. But they came up with a plan to basically give him a sense of community while he was recovering physically so that he would not become more mentally ill over the fact that he couldn't get out and go. So people just stop in and will talk to you on a regular basis. They will wait for you to come home. Like if you're not home, they might just sit at your house and just wait for you to come by because they know you'll be home soon. And it's important that you have conversations on a regular basis, that you're checking in with your family. There's a picture on this slide of a door, and if you look, there's a key in it. And they would leave the keys in their doors just like this. It's kind of like an open invitation. They were trustworthy. People didn't like break in and take things. And so they would leave their keys in the door as kind of a, just like, we don't need to take them and lock the doors all the time. Like they just trusted everybody and people were respectful of that. And, I think we could all learn from that here because unfortunately, people have a lot of hate and distrust for others. And so the way that they live is just so much more in respect for each other, and those connections to relationships is very key. Family is very much a part of their daily relationships. People will live with multiple generations there. So the grandmother may be taking care of great-grandchildren and had taken care of her own children and grandchildren as well in the home, but still continue that caregiving well into their 90s, even into 100 years of age, still caring for family members at home. They don't live in nursing homes. Even if someone's unable to take care of themselves, which is fairly rare, but if that is the case, they will live with somebody who can take care of them. They're very much connected to each other and making sure that their friends and family are taken care of and are doing okay. They don't use technology a lot. They do have Wi-Fi, they have internet, they have cell phones, but they do not rely on them like we do. They use them basically if they need to reach somebody that doesn't live close by, because if they live close by, they're just going to stop over and talk to them. They're not going to call them. They're just going to, go see them. So technology is not used beyond just as a resource. It's not like I have to have it. When we would go into town and see people milling about, they weren't staring at their phones, they weren't texting, they weren't scrolling through social media. They just truly connected with the people that were around them. They were talking to each other, not isolating themselves to looking at a screen. Which leads me to the next point, is living in the moment. They truly just try to enjoy life then and there. They slow down, they focus on who's around them. There are many business owners, because their stores and things are all local. They don't have box chain stores. And so, their hours for their businesses are whenever the business owner wants to have their door open. And they know where they live. So if they're not open, like if they're not at the store that moment, they'll go next door to where they live or walk down the street and say, hey, I wanted to come buy something, or okay, we'll be right over. And they just open the store at that moment. They might take a nap in the afternoon and close the store up for a couple hours and then open it back up into the wee hours of the evening. There's not like this 9 to 5 concept, because they're truly living within the moment. If somebody comes by while they're working and they need help, they're going to go help their friend, or they're going to tend to whatever the need is right then. They want to avoid stress. They try to avoid stress. I mean, we often heard, oh, no worries, no worries. That was the concept of, like, it's not worth stressing over. Life has enough stresses. Let's just enjoy our life and not stress on all the things that come at us. They eat as a family. They invite you in. There's a picture on the screen here of this man, and he was serving us his homemade wine. We had been watching him tend to his goats on the hill, and he said, come to my house. And so we followed him down the hill to his house, and he broke out all these little glasses, and he served us homemade wine and bread, cheese, and then out of nowhere, he brought goat meat. We're like, in the middle of the day, he just brought us some goat meat, because, it's like, it's a mealtime. If there's people there, they might bring out some type of snack so that they can just live in the moment and enjoy the people around them. And being present is very important. That, it's all about who's right there, right then. We were crammed into his house. There was 11 of us that went on this trip. This picture only shows 3 people really in this man, but we were crammed around this little table, and, he got out these little glasses. They drink this homemade wine, but it's very in small portions. Like those glasses were like a juice glass. They weren't like a normal wine glass, and you just get like a couple ounces. And it was kind of expected that you drink the wine, even if you didn't want it, because that was their way of sharing something that they had made. And everybody drinks it, that's just the way of life there. And so taking care of yourself and others by avoiding stress. And, here in the States, I think with the pandemic, it's taught some of us that we can live without some of the activities that we put into our day. We tend to just fill things up and schedule things one thing after another. And, when we were in the hunkering down stage and told to stay home, I think it taught some of us, wow, we can actually do this. We don't have to have everything put into our schedule. And now that we're starting to get back to more activities and more public events going on. You know, as a parent myself, I've kind of learned that, you know, we don't have to do all of this stuff. And it does kind of cut down on the stress, the fewer things you have on your agenda. And yet we've also become a stronger family because we're spending more time with just those that we live with. So I think that learning from Ikaria and applying it now during this pandemic, I think we really can see benefits of this time that is unlike anything we've ever been through before. You know, checking in with each other, you know, mental health is a huge issue, and you know, the pandemic did not help that in any case, but it is important that we check in with our family and friends and make sure that everybody is okay. Maybe we can't go sit in their house with them, but we can go knock on the door and we can chat with them from a distance and just check in with them, making sure that everybody is okay. We can learn from their experiences and apply it now during this pandemic. So the next thing that we learned, this is one of the biggest things that we all kind of came to the conclusion was really important to centenarians, those that live to be 100 plus, is to have a purpose in life. You know, we have seen how people living in nursing homes right now are secluded. They can't get out, their families can't come in. And they're just losing all hope in what their day has to offer. And in Ikaria, every person has a purpose, and it doesn't matter how old you are. You don't just retire and stop working. You keep working, you keep living every day. You have a purpose. That purpose might be you're taking care of a family member. It might be tending to your animals, your crops, your garden, helping others. You know, maybe it's checking in with somebody each day to make sure they're doing okay, which helps you know that you're doing okay. Keeping a positive attitude. You know, there really wasn't road rage there at all. We kind of laughed as a group because we would go on a bus and we would get to an intersection, which these were very like gravel, dirt roads, not really the roads that we're used to. And somebody would be sitting in the intersection talking to somebody else in a car, and they would just stop and they would honk as a way to say, hey, stop, I want to talk to you. And then they would chat sitting there in the road, and we would come along in our 15 passenger bus and be ready to move on with our day. And we couldn't move because they were just sitting there, and they were not ready to move because they were having a daily chat. And it was funny because like in America, we'd be like, come on, we got things to do. But in Ikaria, they're like, oh, hey, join our conversation. You know, it was like the more the merrier. And so, you know, having the purpose in your day, things to do, people to check in with, you know, is very, very important. It was not uncommon to see the elderly working in the fields. This man in the tree, this was taken by us. This man was climbing a tree and collecting lemons out of the tree. And I don't know about you, but I don't think I want somebody 95 years old climbing a tree because I would be fearful that they would fall. But in Ikaria, they're going to make sure that if they're able to do it, they want them to still do it. They don't want to hold people back. You know, having that purpose and letting them do what they can physically do is acceptable to them. And it allows them to keep going. And if you have a reason for living, you're going to keep living. When they talk about retirement there, they just talk about it as receiving a pension, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop working. Many of them run a personal business service. So for example, like heating and cooling or a plumber or whatever, it's all local people, little shops that sell the needs that they have, little cafes, that kind of thing. They're not going to stop working just because they've reached 65 or that they have what they think is a cush retirement, that they can quit working and live off of what they've earned up until that time. They just keep on living, keep on working. There just really isn't a point in their life that they think, well, it's my time to just take a break. They don't live that way. So as we come here to kind of wrapping things up, we were able to interview a doctor that worked on the island, and they had limited doctors because they didn't really have a great need. If there was a severe need, the people would go to Athens, Greece. They would go to the mainland, to the city, to receive care if it required anything beyond just minimal care. They utilized pharmacists more than they used doctors for their needs. They would go to the pharmacy and say, oh, I have a rash here. What do you think I should use? And then they would give their expertise at that moment. But the doctor that we interviewed, we asked him and said, what do you think is the reason for longevity here? What do you think that we should take back with us to the States? And so his answer was kind of multifaceted here, but he said, laugh often, dance a lot, which I haven't mentioned that, but they do dance there a lot. They have a unique sense of music that you can actually look up there. You can like do a Google search for Icarian music. It's very unique and got a nice beat to it for dancing. So they dance a lot. He suggested to fall in love, work hard, but not too much, stress less, and don't eat too much. So it really kind of just summarized how the things that we had already learned from other people, his way of living long life. And this picture on the bottom right corner is an Ikaria dance. They dance kind of in a circular, almost like a spiral. And so there's people in the center and you kind of move around in a circular motion. And they have festivals where they just often get together to dance. So that's why he mentioned dance a lot. And then the other picture is the group of us from Purdue that went to Ikaria for this trip. And the Aegean Sea is in the background. You can see the beautiful blue seas in that picture. So the question I give you or leave with you is, can you do this here? Do you feel like some of these are tips that you can apply to your own life and hopefully have a long life ahead of you? And it's never too late to start doing any of these things, because they're going to make your day better. Even if it doesn't increase your life longer, it will make your day today hopefully be better. So I leave with you these secrets to successful aging at any stage of your life: to find purpose today, have some joy, relax, slow down, enjoy the moment, laugh often, love others, make sure you're eating fresh greens, beans, fruits, vegetables, and seafood every day. And this is key: move your body every day. You don't necessarily have to exercise, just make sure that you're moving. Take advantage of opportunities to just move your body. Maybe it's in the form of dance. Maybe it's in the form of hiking a trail that allows you to be in nature. Do things that allow you to experience life like the Icarians did, but do it here in the States. Enjoy your nature. I love nature, and I make it a priority that my kids are in nature and have a respect for it. And so I encourage you all to seek joy in nature, even when it's cold. It's very beautiful in the winter, even though from the inside, you can still enjoy parts of it by looking at it outside. But even when you go to your mailbox as a way to get some physical activity and checking your mail, notice things in nature, pick out things that bring beauty to your day. Find little pieces of habitat for animals as a way to observe nature, or even observing animals in their nature. So birds, feed birds and watch the songbirds come to your feeder as a way for you to experience nature just in your own home. Okay, so that really summarizes my trip in a very short synopsis. I could go on and on for hours, but one of the things I want to leave you with is I want you to think about somebody you know that has lived to be close to 100 years of age. Think about that one person, or two or three or whatever. Think about somebody you know personally that has lived a very long life. Have they done any of these things that I mentioned today on a fairly regular basis? And think about how that potentially has increased their life and how their perspective of a centenarian can be applied here in the States. So think about that person. Maybe jot down things that they have done that you would agree has contributed to their long life. And maybe that is something that if you're not already doing those behaviors, you could pick up and apply in your own life. And with that, I thank you, and I leave you with this beautiful sunrise here, or sunset actually, at Ikaria. And there will be an evaluation that will be dropped in the chat box, a link for that. And there's also a publication that I have that you can utilize for a resource for references. And if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask those to me directly, or you can drop them in the chat box. I can't see the chat box at the moment. I will have to